a quiet betrayal in the Indo-Pacific, and Taiwan is feeling it. The United States is walking back its military commitments, blocking high-level visits, and cancelling key defence meetings, all to avoid upsetting China. As President Trump courts Xi Jinping for a trade breakthrough, Taiwan is paying the price. With Washington growing colder, Taipei is left exposed and anxious. Meanwhile, the UK steps into the vacuum, signalling it's ready to fight even as the US steps back. Is this the moment America's Taiwan policy begins to unravel? Washington is increasingly seen to be distancing itself from Taiwan, not just by blocking a stopover by President Lai Ching-te, but also by cancelling a key defence meeting with Taiwan's top military official last month, revealed by the Financial Times. In June, Taiwan's Defence Minister Wellington Koo was scheduled to visit the Washington area for talks with Elbridge Colby, the Pentagon's third-ranking official. But the meeting was abruptly cancelled at the last minute. According to the Financial Times, several sources familiar with the matter stated that the US government quietly withdrew its support. Officially, US officials cited the timing of military operations in Iran. But multiple sources told the FT that internal concerns played a larger role, particularly fears that Koo's visit could upset sensitive trade talks with Beijing and jeopardize President Donald Trump's effort to arrange a summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping. The White House has declined to comment on the cancellation. Taiwan's de facto embassy in Washington issued a short statement. It was long-standing policy not to comment on matters related to military exchanges. Though efforts are underway to reschedule the meeting, Washington reportedly wants to downgrade it to a lower level, a shift that has unsettled officials in Taipei. One US official said the level of engagement is still under review. The decision has added to growing anxiety in Taiwan, especially after reports that the White House denied President Lai permission to transit through New York on July 28 en route to Central America. The move followed objections from the Chinese embassy in Washington. Ryan Hass of the Brookings Institution noted the decision came against a backdrop of growing unease in Taipei about a perception that President Trump is seeking to lower tensions with Beijing to smooth a path towards his expected meeting with Xi Jinping this fall. The diplomatic chill comes at a time when Taiwan is stepping up defense spending to deter growing Chinese military threats. In June, Taipei began seeking US approval to buy $20 billion worth of long-range weapons. But that deal, along with a hoped-for tariff agreement before an August 1st deadline, may now be in jeopardy as Washington focuses on broader talks with Beijing. Taipei's concern is clear. Its closest ally may now be shifting its strategic calculus and leaving Taiwan increasingly exposed. Meanwhile, Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te is set to delay his trip to his country's remaining allies in Latin America, amid conflicting accounts of the reason for the postponement. Lai was expected to travel to the Americas next month, as his government seeks to shore up support in a region where many countries have cut diplomatic ties in favor of relations with China, which claims Taiwan as its territory. Amid reports that the Trump administration had opposed a proposed stopover by the president in New York, his government said Lai had no overseas travel plans due to domestic issues, including natural disasters and tariff negotiations with the United States.
President William Lai currently has no plans to travel overseas. Lai did not have any overseas travel arrangements because of ongoing recovery efforts in southern Taiwan, following Typhoon Dana's and international developments, such as tariff negotiations with the US. Any finalized overseas itinerary would be announced by the presidential office in line with usual procedures.
At a routine news conference, Xiao denied a Financial Times report that said Lai's planned visits to diplomatic allies Paraguay, Guatemala and Belize had been delayed or cancelled due to US President Donald Trump blocking a stopover in New York following protests from China. Meanwhile, the US Department of State said on July 29th that its policies for stopovers by Taiwanese leaders have not changed. However, when asked about Lai's visit, US State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce told a regular news briefing no travel plans had been announced, so the issue was hypothetical.
At this point, there have been no travel plans for the president. There has been, as a result, nothing canceled. U.S. transits by high-level Taiwanese officials were fully consistent with our long-standing policy and practice.
Meanwhile, Democrats on the House Foreign Affairs Committee accused Trump of folding to Beijing. Raja Krishnamurthy, who is the top Democrat on the House's China Committee, called it another example of the Trump administration caving to China in hopes of reaching a trade deal. Presidents of both parties have allowed Taiwan officials to transit through the US in the past, and now should be no different, he said in a statement. In a major development, the UK Defence Secretary became a beacon of hope for Taiwan as US support seems to wane. Britain is ready to fight in the Pacific if conflict breaks out over Taiwan, the Defence Secretary John Healey suggested. John Healey was speaking on board the HMS Prince of Wales alongside Richard Marles, Australia's Deputy Prime Minister, as the ship docked in Darwin to join war games with allies, including the US. Asked by The Telegraph about what the UK is doing to help countries like Taiwan to prepare for potential escalation from China, Mr. Healey said,
If we have to fight, as we have done in the past, Australia and the UK are nations that will fight together. We exercise together, and by exercising together and being more ready to fight, we deter better together.
Healey, however, said he was speaking in general terms and said the UK would prefer to see any disputes in the Indo-Pacific resolved peacefully and diplomatically. However, while the UK may be increasing its attention towards the Indo-Pacific, this will not involve greater engagement with Taiwan. When asked whether the UK may engage more formally with Taiwan, Healey said, "There's no change in the UK's approach to Taiwan." Experts have cautioned that an invasion of Taiwan could result in a conflict that would involve countries across the globe. Healey acknowledged that threats are increasing in the Indo-Pacific region, where China's military has seized contested reefs and is accused of intimidating its neighbours. The British government has previously refrained from commenting on whether it would intervene if a conflict were to break out. The Royal Navy has 2 permanent patrol vessels in the region. As part of its national security strategy published earlier this year, the UK government recognised that there is a particular risk of escalation around Taiwan,